Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be doing my top 10 favorite revenge manhwa. Starting off at number 10. Disaster Class Hero was supposed to be the second coming of solo leveling, and while it doesn't quite meet that level of expectations, the art is solid and we have a good revenge tale on our hands with a main character that's basically left for dead in a dungeon and comes out some time later to get revenge on his previous allies that kind of left him hanging. The storyline concept is not one that's completely original, but its execution is also not entirely original. We get to the revenge a little bit too quickly to my liking in this one, and there's not much of a build-up. The character comes back OP as hell from the beginning, and because of that, there's a little bit of a missing point in it. That being said, it's a whole lot of fun nonetheless. The main character is brash and brutal at giving the beatdown on people that cross him in the wrong ways, and I'm always a weak to those types of storylines. At number 9 is Guard Pass, a manhwa that it definitely doesn't have the same like video gamey vibes as the previous one I mentioned, but Guard Pass has a lot of fun aspects to it. Right from the beginning, you have an endearing couple of characters, the main character and this girl that he's with. There's this setup where this girl gets attacked and beaten really badly, and the main character has to go through kind of like, I'll call it a training arc, but they kind of jump really quickly ahead with it and kind of find who is behind the beatdown and get revenge for the girl that he cares about. But what's interesting is like this character's not OP. He has some advantages because he's a bigger guy, he weighs more, he learns jujitsu, but he's still struggling in a lot of these fights, and I really respect that it's not just pure beatdown, because a lot of times in these revenge stories, and you'll have some on this list I really enjoy, are really quick to give the main character these OP skills or OP powers that make the revenge pathway too easy to my liking. Shifting to something completely different at number 8, the Lord's Coins aren't decreasing. This one has a bunch of other names as well, but this one I enjoy a lot. Video game system once again, however this time it's some bartering going on. We have a system that allows them to purchase items and exchange things for certain types of currency within this world and between dimensions, and it creates this dynamic where the main character that's living his second life gets to take revenge on a bunch of different people that crossed him and his family in his previous life, leaving him for dead at the end of it. And it's a lot of fun, and surprisingly you get a little invested in this like digital currency system where there's exchanges, because there's people within the trading system itself that were at the source of some of the issues he faced in his previous life, and he needs to get even with them as well. And it's creates some fun storylines that are at least a little different than what you're typically seeing out there with manhwa. At number 7, we have Kill the Hero. Kill the Hero is straight up main characters in the party gets betrayed by his allies, left for dead, reincarnated, starts his revenge cycle. You've heard it all before. That being said, the pathway to revenge and the singular focus on revenge in this story is really good. A lot of stories start off with revenge as their motives, but honestly, actually including one on this list, and it becomes more of a different type of story along the way, with revenge just sporadically dropped in. But it's really enjoyable to see a character like the main character of the story so deeply invested in his revenge that he needs to get revenge on the people along the way to damage his great opponent so that he could eventually beat down the big bad of the story. A lot of fun, and the most recent chapters have really been hitting it out of the park. I'm loving this one 100%. At number 6 is Magic Emperor, and when I talked about a story that is about revenge, but honestly becomes about far more other things than about just revenge, Magic Emperor is a good example of it. It starts off with this idea of him wanting to get even with those that betray him at the start of the story, but honestly, if you look at where we're going, we're a long ways away from him being able to do that, just because the climb in this case is a long process. That being said, his beatdown of all those that cross him along the way, as well as just those that he wants to fight against, is so much fun. Of all the bingeable series, Magic Emperor is definitely near the top of those that is just fun to binge. If you start reading it and you like the vibe of it, you're gonna hit the 300 chapters in a day without any issues, because it's a lot of fun to read. Week to week, a little more painful, however I will say it's still worth the read and worth checking out. At number 5 is Legend of Azura Venom Dragon. Ironically, these are not all classed at the same level in my tier list, but when it comes to revenge, Venom Dragon is among the best because it is a story purely about revenge. The character actually, for the first chapters, for the weakest part of the story, is almost too focused on revenge, and he has no skills to back up his desire for revenge other than a certain poison related thing that is about the main character that you should discover as you read it. But as the second arc and this little time jump occurs in the story and he becomes this more holistic, big picture revenge kind of character, you have a switch in this story and it becomes immensely better as a tale. You just like the main character so much more because he's a little tough to follow at the beginning and the story can be a little depressing because he's gone through a rough period. But with the second half of what we had so far, it has really picked up and that revenge tale is turning into something pretty damn epic. At number 4 is Chronicles of Heavenly Demon, another one where the revenge is all the while always being present in the story. It also doesn't detract from the story becoming something a little bit more over time. The rise of our main protagonist from being this betrayed character in a previous life to climbing up the ranks of a sect to be near the top or the leader, depending on where you're at in the story, is a fun ride. His different quests he has to go on, his different assassination missions, the revenge he gets on some characters along the way, and the huge war arc that we're going through that will lead us to getting the revenge on some of the last characters he needs to get it on is just an epic quest that is about so much more than just his revenge because he's impacted the lives of so many people. It's an amazing story. The art is really cool and has its own unique little vibe that you can see in a couple of series but still has its vibe, and some great storytelling that is not like too many things out there. Check it out. At number 3 is Second Life Ranker, a story of a main character who gets a message post-mortem from his brother that had climbed this tower and faced his end, betrayed by his group of allies as he climbed this tower. And now the main character enters this adventure to get revenge on those that betrayed his brother and caused his death. And along the way, he has to discover the secrets of what's going on. He has to become stronger so that he can actually get revenge. He uses tons of skills from his military past. He uses the details left in his brother's diary to get access to itemization and different skills that others don't succeed at. It's just really well written and well woven to build a story where the character's strengths become justified due to the information that he has. And it's a whole lot of fun. Honestly, from a pure storytelling perspective, this one is really tight. It's giving you that revenge, but it's also giving you these micro stories along the way with different characters and different sub-stories. But the overarching revenge tale is always present because it's the motivating fire that burns behind the main character's choices. And it's a whole lot of fun. At number 2 is Nanomachine. And Nanomachine, while it is a revenge story, it's about a bit more than revenge. It's about a prince that is basically so far down the succession line that he's pushed aside, actually attempted to end his life. Well, people tried to attempt to end his life. And he ends up with this skill based on nanomachines that help him out along the way. But now he has to kind of get even with those that were trying to end his life, get even on the father that left him behind. Now we're at a point in the story where I think we're about to reach this point where it'll go from being kind of more of a rising and a little bit of revenge story to being something else. But that path along the way of him beating down these opponents, becoming stronger, and that time jump left us with such epicness that it is a must read if you're not already reading it. At number 1 is Legend of the Northern Blade, of course. It's my favorite manhwa of all time, but it's also a revenge tale about a son who lost his father to a bunch of people that were too cowardly to accept who he was. But also a son that doesn't know everything about who's behind things, who's manipulating things from the shadows, and we're only just finding things out in the story about just how deep the rabbit hole goes in regards to all that type of manipulation and planning on the part of the bad guys to kind of betray his father, also take power for themselves, and this pathway of him rebuilding what his father lost, getting his honor back, beating down the villains, is one that is an epic tale that is absolutely worth checking out. If you want to know where these stories kind of rank in regards to all the manhwa that I read, I invite you to check out the tier list that I made a little while back that covers 100 different manhwa that I read and where they rank compared to each other.